It's my pleasure to introduce you all to Professor Ratna Naidu, one of our distinguished sociologists who has had a career spanning almost 6 decades, and her intellectual contribution to the discipline is mainly in the areas of sociology of development, communalism, and urban issues. She received the Lifetime Achievement Award from the Indian Sociological Society in 2017. She was trained in economics and sociology, and the interdisciplinary framework she brought to our discipline is rich in its analytic insights and empirical rigor. She earned a BA and MA degree, both degrees in economics from Calcutta University, and then went on to do a master's and doctoral work in sociology at the University of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in the United States. She returned to India after her doctoral work and had several stints in Delhi, including the Institute of Economic Growth, where she worked with distinguished sociologist M.N. Srinivas, who mentored her. She joined the University of Hyderabad in 1979, and she spent almost 2 decades there. She served as the head of the Department of Sociology, which she single-handedly established when she joined in 1979. And then later on, she became the Dean of the School of Social Sciences. She was also one of the Deans of the Sarojini Naidu School of Fine Arts and Communication. She served as Director of Academic Staff Colleges, and her career culminated ultimately as Vice Chancellor of Sri Padmavati Mahila Viswavidyalayam in Tirupati, Andhra Pradesh. She was an institution builder, an academic, and she earned laurels from her peers nationally and internationally. Intellectually, she has 3 substantive books, the first of which was Values and Models in Modernization, a theoretical exploration of the role of values in social change in contemporary society. And she offered a critical assessment of modernization theories that were current in the middle of the 20th century. Her second book, for which she won the Ghurye Award from the University of Bombay in 1981, was The Communal Edge to Plural Societies, a comparative study of India and Malaysia. And she looked at both these societies, and it's rich both in its empirical and theoretical presentations. Her third major work it's called The Old Cities and New Predicaments, a much-cited work which brought in both communalism and urban sociology, where she looked at the walled city of Hyderabad, the old city of Hyderabad, and she used massive sets of data to understand the density of population, the high density of population in this area. So this has become a substantial work in both the study of communalism as well as urban society. Several of her students remember Professor Naidu as a teacher, and she, of course, was my own teacher. I also did my MPhil with her, and she was definitely an inspiration and someone who still has the energy that needs very much to inspire the current generation of our students. She was, I think, one of the primary contributors, not only in areas of sociology, but also in establishing it as a discipline that many of us have come to love and cherish. I'm very happy to have this conversation, and I'm grateful to her for agreeing to do this with me. She currently lives in Mumbai and has been writing and trying to bring out unpublished and published papers in another volume. Professor Naidu, thank you so much for agreeing to do this for us. The Indian Sociological Society has started this recording of online interviews with eminent sociologists, and on the President, Professor Maitreyi Chaudhary's request, I thought I will talk to you about your own research journey in sociology. So let me start with the basic question about how sociology came to you, or how you came to sociology, whichever way you want to put it.
I did my MA in economics while I was working, and I did my economics in private. So it took me one more year, and I was always interested in development economics. So when I moved to sociology, that interest, initial interest continued, and I went to sociology also quite by accident. Sociology was not a
Popular discipline yet, I suppose.
no, at that time it was not there in most universities. There was anthropology, and a branch of anthropology was social anthropology, but sociology was something new. A friend of ours, a family friend, suggested the subject, as he knew many people in University of Pittsburgh faculty there, and they offered me a assistant ship, and Fulbright had advertised for grants for travel. I applied and was
awarded the grant.
I was awarded the grant, and so everything was paid for. And to my surprise, I found myself on the way to a wonderful academic career. Yeah, I didn't know then at that time, but it turned out to be a very wonderful adventure.
Yeah,
So,
I think we've all learned so much from your experience, generations of students, and your own work has been always, I think at least, questioning the semantics, the language, and the way, the evolution of concepts.
You see, I was interested in development, and at that time, most American sociologists interested in India or any of the underdeveloped countries, they were talking about modernization, and there was a great influence of Max Weber's Protestant ethic thesis and so on. And I found it rather puzzling because it didn't fit my experience of life in India. And I began to question. My journey for questioning concepts from Western institutions started early during my years in the USA.
Because the discipline itself is in some ways rooted in the Western one.
The discipline itself is of Western origin, and so sociologists mostly do their work on institutions. So it is important to understand that nexus of the origin of the discipline it makes a difference how it shapes your thinking and your questioning. So actually, when I came back to India, I found field experience was important, and it was very much influenced by anthropology departments.
Yes, the social anthropology in the British tradition.
Yeah. So I had to learn the hard way through my own field work the reality of the situation in India. By years of field work in India and some other Asian countries.
Malaysia particularly. Yeah. I think the whole modernization and development conceptual framework is something that you grappled with and used
for many years. For many years, yes.
Yeah.
And the most important problem was the question of values. In the subject, in the literature in the West, it was mostly values and norms, etc., all linked. Norms were uh, a behavior at the ground level, values came from cultural and religious traditions. So I thought I separated the two, and values I labeled as preferences, cultural preferences, whereas norms are evolved with the evolution of the society into new densities of population, new norms required for interaction between people, and so on. So norms were prescriptions, rules of behavior, whereas values are cultural and
Learned.
So this work I came back to many years later when I did a piece on secularism, and whereas secularism can be the secular person can both be religious and be secular. This point became clear almost 40 years later when there was a booming, buzzing religiosity Indian across the world, because the values of religion also changes with the situation of the ground evolved to a new situation.
Sure. Like Hyderabad was, I'm sure, a big bed of communalism, and it gave.
But Hyderabad was much later. Before that, I was in Delhi for 6 years.
Yes.
And I had some interaction with Professor Srinivas, who taught me the value of field work, which was completely separated from theory. So I had been doing theoretical work for a long time to get some clarity on concepts. It was a good break for me to get away from that. But while I was mentored by him for a very short while in Delhi. So I had worked for Professor Lipset
at Harvard,
and also in Berkeley, and he had given me an introduction to Professor Srinivas. That's how I met him. But he left a lasting impact on me.
Yeah, I'm sure it was a very different kind of experience.
Yes. So I did field work in Bidar, and then before that in Ahmedabad, and I don't see much of a change from 69 riots and 2002 riots.
Gujarat.
Except in Gujarat. Except that, of course, the whole, the entire digital technology which has come has made a big difference where everybody gets to know. Magnitude is known to
large number of people
in
different places in the world.
Whereas in 69, during the riots, the volume which came out, the report which came out was not circulated because it would enhance animosity and riot situation. And newspapers carried very little of what happened there. But 2002, the whole technology of print media and
Electronic media.
yeah, had changed. So it was much more well known globally.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but basically, from what I have learned about the 2002 riot, it was not very different from the
1969.
69.
Hmm. And the Malaysian example that because your
Malaysia,
comparative sociology
I
is
was
very
with the
strong.
Institute of Economic Growth, and I have to again be grateful to Professor Srinivas who enabled all these moves in Delhi. First with Council for Social Development and then to Institute of Economic Growth. And there there was some money from UNESCO for field studies in some other Asian countries. I was asked to go to Malaysia. So my conceptual framework for a comparative study was framed during that time, and communalism as a problem, as I've written elsewhere and in my book.
Yeah, I think your Communal Edge probably is the book that people know you for a lot more than the values.
Yeah,
yes.
That it is uh, a problem of which is endemic because it's not a problem which can be solved by regionalism or uh, by fiat, by law, as in the case of caste, by reservation. It cannot be corrected because here the methodology is important. That methodology of spatial distribution of population is important. This is why, from my experience, I think openness to interdiscipline is very important for original work.
Yeah, because you came from
economics
and geography probably played, psychology probably.
Professor V.L.S. Prakash Rao, who introduced me to the idea that spatial distribution of populations are important inputs into the understanding of society.
Yeah.
So, in Malaysia or Sri Lanka, has, according to the recent elections, has already overcome the problem that the conflict between the communities, like the Tamils and the Sinhalese in
Sri Lanka,
and the bread and butter issue has become more, the living problems
the daily issues
have overcome the communal problem. Whereas in regionalism, you can have a separate region or a state and have an autonomously governable region so that the conflicts are resolved on the basis of state and center. Whereas communalism is difficult because distribution of population, minority population among the majority are such that it is not possible to separate. So from all this, I also learned about the psychological aspects that ethnocentrism is not really a problem. Ethnocentrism per se can be quite normal to be suspicious of others, to be prefer your own, to be not so friendly towards outsiders. All this is quite normal. But communalism happens when that normalcy is violated and there is a pathology in your memory bank
Yes.
about other communities.
The inputs that you drew also from psychology play a big role in the whole understanding of the communal. But what you just said about the relationship to the spatial density of the population and the mapping of people's actual living, I think that led you to the other specialization in urban studies.
Mentioned that my social psychology was from a Professor Burkhard Holster,
Your
who yes, he was my guide. Advisor. I learned social psychology from him. He is a PhD. He was from the University of Bonn, Germany. He's no more, but I learned a great deal of social psychology from him, which I could, which enabled me to understand the pathology of communalism. Now, how did I come to urban studies? Because I moved to Hyderabad when I got married, and for a long time I was unemployed. But I got employment in a study sponsored by HUDA, Hyderabad Urban Development Authority. The vice chairman was a very learned person,
a historian,
IAS officer, but he was always into research and interested in research output. So he had said, this interdisciplinary project on optimum metropolitan development of Hyderabad. And Professor BLS Prakash Rao was the consultant on this project. And I learned a great deal from him of how to interpret from cartographic material and from mapping of densities and so on to apply later to my study on Hyderabad old cities where in the old city in Hyderabad there was a lot of riots at that time, and
this was the 1980s.
I requested a planning commission project for that because the students at that time did not have JRS, and there was no funding for PhD students in those days for social sciences. It came a couple of years later, but that funding for planning commission helped me keep the students who wanted to do PhD work. And the study, what was your question?
How you came from, study of ethnicity and communalism to the study, to urban studies. I think that's a very organic move for you.
No, it's all by chance really, because I got this job on this multidisciplinary project, and where there was an economist and
urban planner,
there's a huge cartographic department and so on. So I learned as I worked. I couldn't get a job in Osmania University, and there was after a couple of years I was able to get a fellowship from senior fellowship from ICSSR, and Hyderabad Central University had just emerged. There was no
1970s.
And but there was no social sciences there.
But you started the sociology department.
Yeah, because before that I shifted my fellowship to
the university.
And thanks to Professor Gurbakh Singh, who was the first vice chancellor, I was able to get affiliation there. and get my project transferred. Uh, so that was the beginning of. After a few months, there was a advertisement for posts, and I applied, and I was able to get a job. And for a while, I was the head of the department. I was the only person.
Only faculty there.
Yeah. Until the others joined.
Yeah, because even now it's known for its urban studies and specialization, and that's primarily because I think
Yes,
of
because
your
I was
contribution.
there teaching urban
Yeah,
studies.
yeah.
And because urban studies actually was new for me also. So in terms of my own training in Pittsburgh and America, but uh, both theory and empirical work combined helped me understand the urban process. And one of the, again, I had to battle with concepts because
There was the size, density, heterogeneity of birth,
the
and
old city
walled cities.
had density in Secunderabad, for instance, the cantonment area. It is so open and livable because of the infrastructure. Whereas the old city, the infrastructure is very low,
Yeah,
and so the
density was very
condition
high.
and density had to be explained. And people who are interested, they can read my. I introduced the whole term, the term slum and blight to explain the reason why the policies should change.
Yeah, and the Old Cities New Predicaments book, I think this is explained very well. Yeah. With this move towards spatial understanding of a walled city of sorts in Hyderabad, then you kind of established, I think, both wings of studying communalism, ethnicity, and urban sociology. And you went on to be a national fellow at TIS after your retirement, where you were also continuing some of your writing. But between the 90s when you retired and now, we know that you have been doing a lot of reading and writing and want to bring out a volume of some published and some unpublished papers. Where are your thoughts going currently?
Yeah, for that, thing is, the when I first came back to India, I just to academically survive, especially when I moved to Hyderabad. So visibility was very important. So anyone who asked me to give a paper, I gave. I went to all kinds of conferences. Later on, I was able to get UGC National Fellowship and UGC National Lecture, etc. Much later. But towards the beginning of when I first came back from America, I was an unknown quantity. So visibility was important, and I published repeatedly in EPW. Who there was, just on the basis of quality of my research output, they accepted my papers, and Seminar was another very visible journal at that time in Delhi, and there were other journals which are no more. They just were there for a while, and they are not there.
Yeah, now with online publishing, a lot of the journals are.
So there is a lot of material which are not
published or accessible to everyone.
So I have collected all this. Also, there was an ICS journal. I don't know if it's still coming up, where the
Social Science Quarterly or something like that.
I was the first volume. I was asked to uh, write a piece on distinction between sociology and social anthropology, if any.
Hmm.
So, in terms of methodology, I have included some papers which I had uh, written at that time, and also for given talks on uh, for access for students if they were, for the sources of data which are available, readily available already in government departments, uh, so that students can benefit from my experience. So these, uh, the other thing, I have written a new introduction. It's not new. I've written an introduction and an epilogue, which brings us up to date on current problems. And the current problems are very different from my early days. Political competition is much more between parties, and uh, the biggest problem, the one big problem I've noticed is that communal problem on which I had worked earlier has become globalized. That the Hindu Sikh problem, which was local uh, is, is now a problem for Canada, for instance, or uh, the communal problem. Again, it's a matter of this ethnocentrism, or which we have the big, largest number of people in the diaspora, Indian, in the diaspora, and they are living abroad, but their heart and soul is in India.
Yeah.
So the the communal problem becomes a bigger issue abroad, even more than here.
Yeah, they also have the resources to probably control things from remote locations.
And technology has
made it possible.
made it more public, and
instant communication is possible as well.
And this, aside from the whole electoral and capital development process, that has meant almost a new kind of game in these countries, in the developed countries, underdeveloped countries. So you look at what happened in Bangladesh or Sri Lanka. So we have to learn from these places. And politics has become much more competitive. So we have to remember that the uh, founders of the constitution, they were almost all educated in London, or
elite.
They were all very from elite classes.
Yes.
And my own father was in the independence movement, and he was in jail for years. So they gave their all, their wealth, their resources, their mind, everything. They gave it all. So they were a different breed. Now politics has become a career, and legislators can get their own, legislate their own income and pension and so forth. So it has become a career. It was never a career at that time.
It was a nation building commitment.
Commitment, and but somehow all of them having been educated abroad, higher education was given more importance. So we had more universities, more IIMs, more IITs, and nobody stayed back in India. They all found jobs and went abroad.
Yeah.
So,
The brain drain, as they call
brain
it.
drain. And, but 75 years on, now we find compulsory primary education. This should have come together with fundamental rights.
You know, you've had such a wonderful journey where, for you, it might seem that there were many roadblocks and many learnings. But for us, I think it seems in one way an organic and seamless journey. But there are, and you moved to looking at, say, the communal issue from what it was to how it has evolved in the digital age with the kinds of communication and other things. You're also talking about the crisis in higher education, all kinds of new issues. But what would your message be for young sociologists today who are doing research?
Message is always for someone who's listening.
Definitely.
Depends on the listener.
Yeah, we had
and their
challenge.
ambitions.
Yeah.
So
We can
if
assume
they're
if they're
interested
listening.
in societal problems, then they, if
An openness to interdisciplinarity, is that what you were saying?
No, not just that. Why the problem is puzzling, and in what way can you contribute towards understanding?
Yeah.
That is my message for one who's puzzled by a problem, just like any scientist.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So
that method of inquiry, the curiosity. Yeah.
And trying to understand the problem, and in the quest for groping, you may have to go to other disciplines.
Sure. Yeah.
But otherwise, it depends on the listener.
Sure.
The message.
Yeah.
If you want to learn something about society and go on to a government job,
Yeah.
that's a different kind of